Well, top of the week to you. Beautiful, finally fall feeling day. And in this part of the country, I love fall. Hold it close, swallow it. Okay, we'll do our best. And the Apalumcan Festival, a little bit wet, but looked like it was pretty strong. Got the opportunity to try to drive through it on 2 occasions. Okay, we got her going now. Good. I don't want the joke to be used. If I can keep this away, they say you can tell when a politician is lying when you see his lips moving, and I don't want to hide it. So people say I'm trying to cover it because we're going to be telling the truth. And I'm glad the green cards and the red cards are here. I wouldn't know what to do without that. I think that maybe I was going colorblind if they weren't. But we're looking forward to today. This is a great opportunity to have feedback, have questions, comments, and as many of you know, we do a lot of live town halls as well as teletown halls. Teletown halls you can hang up if you want, or you can stay on, or you can ask questions as well. We're still number 10 out of 535 members of Congress for the number of live town halls we do, not counting the town halls that are teletown halls. Feel it's important to, and we are a community. We have differences. That's the American way, isn't it? And it always has been, always will be. And I hope that we can find a means by which, over the next several months or so, we can start drawing together, accept the fact that we are in the setting we are in now. November's election has long been passed, and we go on as Americans just like we've gone on in other administrations before this, a long time before this, and right up to the present. So here we are, and glad to be with you. Key things that are going on in Washington, certainly people ask me all the time, how you doing? And I say, well, that's the one choice I have, so I'm doing well. I can make that choice, and I'm glad that I can say that. In the House, plenty of things are going very well. We, as a record so far since the beginning of this term of office, have passed a full repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act, sent it to the Senate. We passed the Dodd-Frank repeal and replace, sent that to the Senate. And all of those of you that have any desire to use capital for investment, grow businesses, you're happy about that, just frustrated that so much sits languishing in the Senate. For the first time in 12 years, we passed all 12 appropriations bills on time, in budget. Those sit in the Senate. That was done a little over a month ago. But all 12 appropriations bills, regular order, over 1,000 amendments were considered. Several of them, of my amendments, were adopted and reside in those pieces of legislation as well. So, good amount of work has been done. Those of you that are here that are concerned about keeping the promises that we made and that the President made on things like building a wall, the funding for that has already been passed and sent to the Senate. It sits there as well. And we look forward to securing our borders and making sure that that takes place. Probably the most important thing that's coming up, and then we'll get to the questions, I want to do that, but as you notice here, there are a couple posters that indicate that we're moving toward tax reform. That is a big need in this country. As a good friend of mine, former colleague from Michigan, Congressman Dave Camp used to say when he was chairman of the Ways and Means Committee that he needed tax reform because our present tax plan and tax code is exponentially more number of pages than the Bible with none of the good news. And that's true. So many exemptions, deductions, special carve-outs, great amount of injustice and unfairness that went on and goes on in our present tax code. That has to be dealt with. And so the effort has been going on for several years now, and now has become very close. We expect to be voting on the tax reform bill that will ultimately give the majority of people in this country the opportunity to do their taxes on a postcard. Fair and simple approach to it. It'll expand the opportunity for people to use their own resources, and as we saw with President Kennedy and we saw with President Reagan and even with President Clinton, when the tax reform took place, tax cuts that resulted from that, the economy grew, but more importantly, the revenue to the federal government grew as well. The trouble was, the discipline wasn't there and the money was spent. And so we find ourselves in a significant burden right now, approaching right now at $20 trillion of debt that my grandkids, hopefully great-grandkids, and others will have to pay. That's a challenge that we need to deal with. So passing the budget bill 2 weeks ago in the House, the Senate, we trust will pass that budget bill this week, which will then give us the opportunity for reconciliation, and the tax reform proposal can go on that and we can move forward. So just a little update on what's been going on. Again, a lot of work has been accomplished in the House. The Senate has been a little bit of a stone wall that we run into. We hope that that will change soon. And if you'd like to give a call to your U.S. senators, Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters, and any other senators that you want to call, and tell them, let's start working to move something forward and just don't hold things up, because American people deserve better than that. We have questions. John Barnhart is here. I see Kevin Cornish on his knees getting something for Clinton or what. I'm glad Dan Swallow is here. You've got equal opportunity if you want to get a question for the city of Tecumseh, but we're delighted to have two village and city managers here. And if any local questions come, I can go to you guys, can I?
Yeah.
Good. So John, Chamber of Commerce President, willing to take this on, let's go at it.
All right. Well, Congressman Walberg, we have a question here from Kirsty from Dundee. And her question is, what do you say to voters who believe the government is a disaster, especially in area of the EPA, healthcare, abuse of federal funds by Tom Price? What is there to give hope?
The only hope I can give is our government was never established to not be messy. If you read the framers and founders and the Federalist Papers, how they established this government, it wasn't supposed to, especially the federal government, wasn't supposed to be as large as it is right now. And that caused a problem. But in it always gave the opportunity, nay, the responsibility, for individual citizens to turn it back. And we've seen that happen on occasion during the history of our country, where it's gotten to a point that citizens said, no way. Either they went through a constitutional amendment, sometimes making mistakes like the 17th Amendment, for instance, and the 16th Amendment, but nonetheless, they've done that. They've thrown people out of office that they've decided didn't represent them. They've changed administrations. They've gone directly contrary to what many people would have thought. We saw that take place in the last election. And so I would say to them, keep the hope. It is a governmental system that's fraught with all sorts of problems, but it's still the best system on the face of the earth, offering the most freedom and opportunity, and yes, most responsibility to members of the public as well. Because as Washington said to the lady who asked the question after the Continental Congress, what type of government do we have? He said, a republic, madam, if we can keep it. It's up to us to keep that republic. It's not simply a democracy where majority rules, but it's a democracy based upon a constitution that sets a guideline in place. And that's where it comes. So I say there's all sorts of hope. We have all sorts of opportunities now to move this country forward. And I think right now, if you look at the economics of the country, we are moving forward, finally. And we're feeling that in this state as well. So we'll keep that direction. Next question.
This question is from Marietta from Newport. She asks, the Maumee, and forgive me if I mess up on some of these questions, if you can maybe help me if I do. The Maumee River is green as is Breast Bay outside my door. What specifically are you doing to change this for the better, not worse?
Well, I, along with a good number of my colleagues who are in the Great Lakes Caucus, have really pushed and been successful in getting things like the full funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative instituted. That's still in place, fully involved there, and we remain involved. Our caucus continues to push the EPA to do what it's supposed to do on the big things, not get involved with the little things like puddles in farm barnyards and the like. And fortunately, we were able to stop that and get them back to working on making sure that our water basins, our major tributaries are dealt with. We've instituted legislation with Marcy Kaptur, myself, Bob Latta, for instance, the three of us who sit right there on Lake Erie with initiatives to deal with algae formation, and that will continue. We push through legislation amendments as well on bills to deal with that. But I think the key thing is the full funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We will. I love those waters.
All right, the next question comes from Tom from Tecumseh, and he asked, explain how reducing investor returns on non-IRA accounts from 85/70 to 70/70, as was the case in previous 70%?
From 85%
To 70%, okay. As was the case in previous successful economies, discourages investment. Where else will investing do better within the protections of the U.S. rule of law? Why isn't this a good start toward your good and balanced budget?
Let me ask for further description on that and where the information is coming from.
I'm talking about why shouldn't we increase the capital gains tax from 15% to 30% as it was in the past. I just inverted it from inverted it. So I want the capital gains tax to go from 15 to 30%. I don't think
Talk up as loud as you can.
investment. Pardon me?
Talk up as loud as you can.
Yeah, you want me to talk loud?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, the question simply is why don't we increase the capital gains tax for non-IRA accounts from 15% to 30%, the way it was in the past? I do not think it'll reduce investment by investors in the United States because it's still the safest place to invest in the world. And if you get a choice between getting a return of 85%, that is, or 70% on your return, and it's still the safest place to get your return, why don't you increase the capital gains tax? And why don't you do that instead of reducing health care to the middle class?
See, Tom, have you heard that that's going to be done? Have you heard that that's going to be done on capital gains?
I haven't heard that they're going to increase the capital gains tax from 15 to 30. Are they? Are you
No.
supportive of it?
They're still working on the capital gains issue. There's been no decision on that. So that's probably something that's considered. And if you leave a note with my office, send an email, whatever, we'll pass it on to Kevin Brady and their team. There has been no specifics put out on capital gains, other than there's no changes being put out yet on what they're going to do with capital gains. The death tax, they said they're going to be repealed. But beyond that, capital gains, there's nothing that has been detailed on it yet.
Do you support it?
We'll wait and watch as it develops.
No, what's your position?
My position is to go with the best plan we can get that'll help the majority of people in this country. And we'll wait. You know, let me point this out. You've been hearing over the course of the past couple of weeks, since the President, the House, and the Senate have come out with a general format for the health care reform, which is, you see, based here. Certain key things they put on very clearly. Other areas, they're working right now within the confines of 535 members of Congress, with individual states and districts, to come up with the best plan that brings a overall tax reduction for all people, that encourages and spurs on the economy, that grows businesses and jobs, and that does away with special preferential treatment to certain sectors. That's the effort that's going on. And the beauty of that is that when it gets done, under this administration, it will work for our country. So we're going to keep working on that area. Next question.
Congressman Kathy from Ann Arbor, her question is, Governor Brownback's tax cutting experiment in Kansas was a huge failure. The promise that tax cuts would generate economic growth didn't happen. The same promises are now being made at the federal level. Why are you supporting this failed tax cut proposal?
Good question.
Because tax cuts always work to grow the economy.
Trickle down doesn't work.
If you don't want to simply disregard free market capitalist policies that work better than any nation in the world, you look back to bipartisan experiments with this that worked. You look back to John F. Kennedy. It worked. You work back, you go back to Ronald Reagan and his tax cuts. They worked. You go back to Bill Clinton with a Republican Congress.
Bush's tax
And it
cuts
worked.
cost us $1 trillion.
The issue is,
tax increases in 8 years.
I'm not going to speak over you, so if you want to carry it on, we'll run less time for the actual town hall meeting answering questions. But if you want to look at the facts, you'll see that when we reduce taxes, it grows the economy. The issue is, as I said once before, issue is you also have to have the discipline to set priorities and reduce the spending. And that's been our problem. When more money comes in, if Congress is undisciplined or a state legislature is undisciplined, you spend it, and then you get yourself in a problem. That is not our intentions to do. Our intentions are to set the priorities and to reduce the spending as well as to give more money back into people's pockets. That's the fact of the matter, and you might want to say it's different, but you can't defeat the facts.
But what
Next
about
question.
Kansas? That's where they actually did what you're talking about, and it did not work. And even the Republicans there
You can
said-
bring up Kansas. That's not the United States. You can bring up Michigan. When we cut taxes, and we cut taxes in the 1990s 26 times. How do I know that? I voted for all those 26 tax cuts. We saw our economy turn around. When I left in 1999, we had $1 billion rainy day fund. We had no deficit, and the economy was going strong. What happened when Granholm came in? We overspent. We took away those tax cuts. We took away the welfare reform that was helping people, and we fell back in the malaise. And that's been turning around since then. Let's go to the next question.
All right, next question is from Craig from Tecumseh. His question is, Republicans were elected to 1, repeal and replace Obamacare, 2, reform taxes, 3, defund Planned Parenthood. What would ever inspire us to vote Republican again in the face of these failures?
I'm glad to see so many people here wanted to see all those things done. And so you'll be happy. You'll be happy to know that in the House, and remember, there are 2 houses. The People's House, which is the House of Representatives. We represent districts, like the 7th District of Michigan. And then you have the Senate to represent the states. The House has done every single one of those. I know that card was probably written before I gave my opening comments, so I understand that. But that's why I gave the opening comments. Because what we said we would do, we've done in the House. We can't control the Senate. We can't control the White House. But we can control the House. And so we've passed, let me reiterate again. A repeal or replace of Obamacare, that was done back in May. We passed the Dodd-Frank repeal and replace, the takeover of the financial institutions that ended up helping the big banks and Wall Street. That wasn't what was intended. And the community banks, credit unions, lending institutions, Greenstone, Farm Credit were hurt because of that. To this day continues. And oh, by the way, auto dealers, et cetera, that come under the thumb of Dodd-Frank. We passed that, sent that to the Senate. We passed the full repeal of funding for not only Planned Parenthood, but any abortion provider in this country. So that was done. So all of the, what ought to make you happy is we put those dollars toward women's health care that comes from community federally qualified health care centers. And those centers do far more in the area of women's health, family health, than anything that Planned Parenthood ever thought of doing. So everything that we said and the president said he wanted to do, we have passed in the House, and it sits in the Senate.
Did not replace anything, there's no plan.
All right, Congressman, next question comes from Barbara from Adrian. And this first portion, I believe, is a quote. It starts off by saying, "I believe there's a climate change, and I'm confident that if there's a real problem, he can take care of it." Coldwater, 2017. How do you decide which problems require you to do something and which ones should you leave to God? It is essential that you are transparent about your decision principle.
Well, in my personal life, I'm a Christian. I'm delighted to say that. And I'm delighted to know that that same lifestyle and choice is available to everyone. And for most of our history, we had no trouble with Christians being Christian. We also had no trouble with Jews being Jews and atheists being atheists. So the question was, in reference to an issue of climate change, where I said, yeah, sure, I believe in climate change. Yeah, has man had some involvement in climate change? Sure. The debate comes on the percentages. And that's a good debate to have. Under questioning last Thursday in our committee on looking at the Secretary of Energy, who was in Rick Perry, I had a chance to hear him answer that same question, and did it very well. And basically answered the same as I did, that it comes down to percentages. And we can't ultimately say 100% that climate change, hang on folks, please. It's very difficult for the people who want to listen to hear if you're talking over it. That's why we have simple rules here in this thing. So,
Let him go.
thank you, Tom. Those are debates how much we have. But I also said as a Christian, I believe that it's very clear that God created this universe. He cares for this universe. Did a pretty good job creating this universe and creating this world. And I know in Scripture, and some of you don't want to hear me quote that, but you asked the question. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." I believe that God does love this world. And I also said, and that's not in the quote that you put in here, I also said that I believe God expects me to be a steward, a good steward of what he created. And so as a steward, I should do everything possible to make sure that we care for this great creation, but we also use it. Because he also said to Adam and Eve, go out and tend, use it. And that's what we're supposed to do. So in my process of dealing with the environment, as even Rick Perry said the other day, I'm going to do everything possible to secure the quality of this environment that also provides productive opportunities for the citizens who live on it. And that's what we're going to do. Next question.
Next question comes from Annie here from Tecumseh. Will you commit, as Senator McCain has asked, to a return to regular order and due process with transparency on a no-rush job, non-reactionary tax plan in the House of Representatives?
Yes.
Good.
In fact, in the House, we do have regular order. I just told you that we went through this whole budget proposal, all 12 appropriations bills on time, in budget, and regular order. Over 1,000 amendments, Republican and Democrat, were considered by the Rules Committee and adopted, and we voted on over 700 of those amendments, several of which were mine. So we're committed to regular order in the House. I can't speak for the Senate, but I sure can speak for the House, and we've committed to that and are doing it for months now on the tax proposal in committee with both parties in the committee dealing with it, and will continue to do that.
Next question comes from Julie from Britain. I have an adult son with autism that depends on Medicaid for many services he needs to survive. How will you protect Medicaid for people with disabilities?
The same way I did in voting for the repeal and replace Obamacare bill.
That's not telling the truth.
The bill that we put through, the bill that we put through the House took care of that young man and everyone else. Pre-existing conditions were covered, and Medicaid was there for them. There was all of that taken care of in our bill. And I wish that the Senate had the opportunity to take that up. Remember, that bill was 129 pages. Even a senator could read it. And in the bill, you could read it, which I doubt many of you have done. And you could have seen that that is cared for. Medicaid and those that were on pre-existing conditions like that were cared for in the bill. I won't debate it any further because that's the facts of the matter. And so we care for people like that. They think, many people seem to think that Republicans don't have kids with autism or have wives with cancer, or Republicans don't have epilepsy. We all deal with those things. And why would we be more prone to say to our families and friends, we don't care what happens to you, we're going to take it away from you? That's absolutely false. And that's why I said earlier on, folks, we have to tone down a bit and get back to being Americans that aren't fighting each other. We're getting tired of that. And that's why we are here in this meeting, as we've been in multiple meetings, giving you the facts, trying to cut through the fake news on both sides. On both sides. So anyway, smile, let's go on, folks. Next question.
All right, this next question comes from Mary from Tecumseh. Regarding the role of God in your decision-making in May of 2017, you said in the Coldwater Townhall meeting, I believe there's climate change and I'm confident that if there's a real problem, He, meaning God, can take care of it. So my question is, how do you decide which problems require you to do something and which ones you should?
I thought I answered that question. I answered that question.
It's a different person though, so that's why
I answered the question. Let's go on next one.
You spoke on the topic, you did not answer that specific question.
Let me just finish off the rest of the question then. So my question is, how do you decide which problems require you to do something and which ones you should leave to God? It is essential that you be transparent about your decisions.
I pray over every issue.
So do I.
So, we agree. Next question.
All right, the next question is from Bill from Chelsea. What is your opinion of Trump's intention to destroy the North Korean government?
Now we're clear, it's the government, right? Question was the government?
Yes.
I applaud him. How many of you support the dictator of North Korea? How many of you think that he's a good man? How many of you think that he is helping his people? How many of you stood on the 38th parallel and looked across from South Korea and seen the striking difference, even in the flora fauna? Okay, I would love to see the leader of North Korea meet his maker, and I would love to see freedom come back to North Korea, and a unification of the Koreas, where there would be freedom for people and opportunity, like in South Korea. That wasn't a question. That wasn't a question. That wasn't a question. That wasn't the question.
money's too weak.
Was that your question?
Yeah, my question.
Was that your question? That one?
North Korea.
No, that wasn't your question. What's the question? Read it again. Read it again.
Ask the questions.
The question was, what is your opinion of Trump's intention to destroy the North Korean government?
I said I agree. To destroy it.
Want to blow up nuclear?
You want to start World War
No, you said destroy the government. Hey guys, you gotta ask the questions right. Okay? Next question.
Next question is from Ed from Tecumseh. Do you support Trump's agenda, the wall, DACA? Do you support Trump's tax cuts? Do you believe Trump is creating a political revolution in this country, and are you on board?
Those tax cuts are my tax cuts. I'm glad they're his tax cuts too. Our Better Way plan had those tax cuts. Our Better Way plan had the repeal and replace of Obamacare. Our tax cuts had, our Better Way plan had a protection of our border. Our Better Way plan had immigration reform. That included dealing with DACA. So I support the efforts, and we're going to move forward. I support on DACA. I support the fact that the president has done what Barack Obama said should have been done, and then ultimately he didn't do. He said that was the responsibility of Congress.
What are you going to do today?
And so we have had that thrown back to us, and that's the right thing. Congress ought to deal with DACA. We ought to come up with a solution to that. We ought to make sure that we have secure borders. We ought to make sure that we have people that can come to the United States legally and benefit by all that the U.S. has to offer and give to the United States as well, even as my father did. That's what I support. And I believe that's the same plan that the president has. And so we're working together on it.
Thoughts and prayers.
Next question comes from Rona, I hope I'm saying that right, from Tecumseh. One is, I'm on Medicare. My supplement insurance doubled last year from $124 to $224. Going up again next year, my prescription insurance went up almost double for next year. Help.
I would agree. We need help. I'm on Medicare. I've seen those same things go up. And that's why, folks, we have to get back to reality. Regardless of politics, the Affordable Care Act is melting down. And the overwhelming majority of people in this country are going to be hurt because of it. You just saw what the president did, and did rightly so. Again, what Barack Obama said as well should have been done, but then he decided, can't wait for Congress to do it, so I'm going to do it myself. So he put in subsidies for the insurance companies. Now, generally, liberals are opposed to subsidizing the big insurance. So it really surprises me now when I see people on the left saying, oh, it's wrong to take away an unconstitutional appropriation
It saves people.
for subsidizing insurance companies. Now, we either abide by the Constitution and law or we don't. And this president said we will, and throw that back to Congress to deal with it. But folks, the reason why those subsidies, those appropriations were taken by President Obama to try to cover for the increasing costs of all that was required under the Affordable Care Act was because there was no money to pay for it, and if the people had to pay for it on their own, they would have decried it even sooner and called for the elimination of the Affordable Care Act while he was still in office. And that wasn't his intentions. As you know, the final component parts of the Affordable Care Act didn't take place until this year, when the president who put it and his name was attached to it was out of office. So folks, we've got a problem. And I think now that the president has done the right thing in saying it is unconstitutional, nay, the court said that. The court said that. They enjoined that CSR from continuing on and paying for appropriated funds that couldn't be appropriated by the president. So the courts threw it back, and we have to contend with it right now. That's why we have to repeal and replace Obamacare.
But you haven't done it. You failed.
Next question.
Next question comes from Christine from Monroe. I am appalled by Trump's reckless tweets on many topics, especially North Korea. As a member of Congress, it is on you to assert your role in approving the use of military force. Hold on. Will you co-sponsor the Restricting First Use of Nuclear Weapons Act of 2017? The Conyers bill defunding any preemptive military force against North Korea without congressional authorization.
We have, no, I won't, but we have plenty of constitutional requirements that the president is going to have to follow, and so far, the president is following all those constitutional requirements. As you see, he's throwing the responsibility back to us on DACA, he's throwing it back to us on CSR, and he's already told us that he expects Congress to be involved with North Korea, with Iran. In fact, he's thrown the Iran deal back to us also, where it should have been all the time. And Republicans and Democrats stood together in opposition to what Obama did in making that agreement with Iran by himself unilaterally. And so, yes, I think that the pattern is in place right now that we are going to do what we're supposed to do. Take it easy, Tom. Don't blow something there, okay? We are going to do what we are supposed to do constitutionally, and so far the president is indicating to us he expects us to do it. I'll take that. Now, as far as his tweets, I can't control his tweets. I have to answer to his tweets. I don't like to answer to some of those tweets, in all honesty. But I'm not the president. I can do what I'm supposed to do. And that's what we're going to do. And those of you that think there's impeachable offenses for tweets, come on. Get a life. Get a life. Tempted to say, let's all take a few seconds here and smile. It'll help us all. It'll help us all. Let's go to the next question.
Did you just tell us to get a life?
I did. I did.
All right, the next question.
This is our job.
Next question is from Christine from Monroe. Are you prepared to vote no on the SHARE Act if the silencer provision is not removed? People at the massacre in Las Vegas heard gunshots and ran for cover. If silencers are available, even that meager protection is gone.
Folks, remember, there's no such thing as a silencer. It's suppressor. Those are suppressors. And if any of you have heard suppressors, you hear the shots. You hear the shots. And I've shot suppressors. You can hear the shots. It's no different than putting an earplug in your ear. You still hear it. No. I'm going to continue supporting the right for citizens to have unrestricted use of the Second Amendment, the liberty that's given in the Constitution. Next question.
All right. The next question comes from Elizabeth from Monroe. When is the right time to talk about gun regulations, and when is life considered more important than gun rights?
I think the important thing to be talking about is the morality of our country.
Yes.
I think that's where we ought to be talking. The actual gun homicides has gone down. The actual gun homicides has gone down, and just go to the sources, you'll find that. Suicide by gun is the issue that's out there. Now, why do we have people in the United States, the greatest country on the earth, in states like that we see the suicide by gun going up? Why do we see communities in this country that have the most restrictive gun laws? Like my home city of Chicago, where I was born and raised. Most dangerous place to live with the most restrictive gun laws. Why is that? So folks, I think we ought to be talking about something far different than that. We ought to be talking about the morality of this country and why we got into the malaise that we are, that people see, number one, a purpose for taking their own life, and two, have no consideration of other people's lives, so that in cities like Chicago, where the criminals have the guns, but the free-loving, law-abiding citizens don't, they're dying in a slaughter. So those are the questions we ought to be asking folks. And I think that's an issue we can address anytime and every time. Next question.
All right, next question is from Stephen from Dexter. Why are you and Congress so slow to act on the opioid crisis and funding for staffing at the VA? Hold on.
Well, folks, I go back again.
Hold on. We're not finished yet. One more part. I am a veteran and do not appreciate what appears to be fake concern. Why are you and your counterparts in D.C. unable to lead on these issues?
Well, I again go back to the fact. We have passed packages of opioid, heroin abuse reform piece of legislation. We passed the CARE Act. We passed 21st Century Cures Act, both of which had significant increases in dealing with opioid heroin abuse. In the Veterans Bill we just passed and sent, of those 12 appropriations bills, we had significant dollars in there, upped increase, even beyond the request of President Obama in the past, dollars for veterans care dealing with opioid heroin abuse. Now the concern you ought to be addressing is to Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters, because the Senate has not taken those bills up yet. We have passed that legislation. It's there for the taking. And I take a bit of offense as saying we are just showing, what was the term, fake concern. That's absolutely false.
HR 406.
And if you see the legislation that I've introduced on that same thing, and Debbie Dingell and I together have introduced, dealing with opioid heroin abuse, we are doing our level best at that, folks. But then it goes back to a moral discussion again about what is happening in our country that's bringing us this type of tragedy that crosses all boundaries. Political, geo, all of it. So bottom line, folks, that's the issue we address. We are doing our level best in the U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you.
HR 4069.
Next question comes from Susan from Adrian. As a retired teacher, I want to know why you are not forcefully objecting to the language and bullying attitudes of Trump. Our children are watching.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm glad you're at the town halls here. Other town halls, questions like that have been addressed. I've not shied away from saying the fact that I don't appreciate all of Donald Trump's tweets, don't appreciate all of the attitudes and emotions that are expressed, but he is the president.
What do you do about it?
And we've said that. I will continue to control my tweets and control my language, and I think you have to admit the fact that that hasn't crossed the line. I can do it for myself. But the American people elected Donald Trump as president. They put him in place, and he is the president of the United States. Whether some of you like that or not, I didn't like the last 8 years, but I worked with the president of the United States in the last 8 years. But I didn't like that. And I know that some of you don't like this president. But like I say, folks, again, we have too much good in the United States of America to let that get us to the point of being angry and bitter all the time. That's why I say get a life. Look outside and see what the beauty is out there.
You speak for us.
I speak for us.
You represent us.
I speak for the 7th District of Michigan.
We are the 7th district.
I understand that.
You speak for us.
And let me answer that question.
Telling us to get a life.
I was elected strongly by the 7th District. I was elected having spent $50,000 less than my opponent.
$12 million.
Look at the full facts. But the people of the 7th District said, Tim, we're going to have you represent us. And 15% over my opponent. Now, if you ask me, do I represent the 7th District, I had better represent you according to what I said I would do, the positions I espoused, the promises I made. If I didn't do that, I would be wrong. So, you have the opportunity, to make your decisions on the base of my representation, my promises, and my promises made and promises kept, along with every other citizen in the 7th District. I don't take that for granted. If I did, I wouldn't do these town halls. Why would I come and do a town hall like this to have people shout me down? Huh? Stop and think about that. If I was just representing the people that elected me, and just keeping that, I would make sure we didn't have public town halls, we'd have rallies. And I would invite the supporters in. But that's not the case. So that's why I say, folks, hey, we reside together, we don't always agree, but we're Americans. I'm proud of that fact, I hope you are as well.
Next question comes from Phyllis from Britain. Why do our representatives in Congress get exempt from the many privileges that we, who they represent and pay them, are told we must do? 1, Social Security, they have their own special plan. 2, subsidies and health care, their own special care instead of forced into what they impose on us. 3, fantastic retirement plans. And 4, many more that we are not even aware of.
I'm glad it comes up because it just doesn't seem to die. And it gives me a chance to answer it. And so a few more people will hear the truth about what actually goes on. And it causes me to gnash my teeth about Rush Limbaugh, who started this. First rumor is that we only have to serve 1 term and we can retire with our full benefits and wages at the level of what we got when we were in office. I mean, there's some question about the intellect of members of Congress, I understand that. But why in the world would I campaign for this office over and over again if I could get that type of retirement after 1 term in office? I served 1 term in office, as you may recollect, 2007 and 8, and then I was defeated and sent home in 2008. Mark Schauer became your representative. 2010, as a result of Mark Schauer voting for Dodd-Frank, the Affordable Care Act, cap and trade, the stimulus plan, et cetera, was sent home.
Gerrymandering.
And I was put back. And I was put back into office. So the question is, if I would have had my full retirement at 100 and I forget what it was at that tenure, well, I know what it was. We haven't had a raise in 12 years. There's been no raise. I'm not complaining, so don't give me the awe stuff. Get a life. You want an answer to it. Why would I put myself running through it if I could be living on $174,000 retired?
You needed a 5th year.
No, I didn't. The rumor I was answering was that we get it immediately. That's not true. Secondly, our financial retirement plan is a defined contribution or defined benefit? Let me answer it. It's a 401k plan. It's a 401k plan that I contribute to and my employer contributes to. So the bottom line is, we're on the same plan as many of you are, and the same lesser plan than probably most people that serve in state government. So bottom line is, it's a 401k plan. That's what we get. Secondly, health benefits. We don't get lifetime health benefits. We don't get lifetime health benefits, so that's not there. FICA. I don't have my most recent pay stub, but I could show you I pay FICA as well. Same thing. So the question was, why do we get those special? We don't. Go home, tell your friends and neighbors that is not true. And Obamacare, oh, by the way, Alex, My staff are here. Dustin? My staffer? Where'd Stephen go? Stephen? Unless their spouses have something other than Obamacare, they're on Obamacare. Yeah, but you asked me. You asked. And members of Congress who don't have a spouse with something else or are on Medicare like me are on Obamacare as well, and that's why we want to do away with Obamacare. Okay, the Affordable Care Act. President Obama called it Obamacare. I'm not being disparaging of that. President Obama called it, but if you want me to call it Affordable Care Act, I'll call it Affordable Care Act. It's not affordable, but it's not affordable, but it's Affordable Care Act. Next question.
All right, next question.
Please go and tell people those rumors. You heard today the truth on this.
Next question is from,
Representative Walberg, with all due respect, could you please stop telling us to get a life? Okay, I'm trying really hard to respect you. I think that's probably disrespectful to us.
I don't think it's I'm not disrespecting it. I'm not disrespecting it. If you're that, if you can't take a simple statement that says, folks, we need to get a life.
No, you didn't say
I get a
Said it
life.
3 times.
Get a life. Enjoy America, folks. Come on, this politically correct stuff at times goes too far. Goes too far. Goes too far. Hey, listen, this is my town hall meeting. We're going to do it the best way we can, okay?
all right, folks, next question comes from Mel from Britain. My wife's insurance, I go to VA, before Obamacare was $546. After Obamacare, it's $726, a $180 increase. Obama subsidy, $540. She pays $196. What happens now that Mr. Trump signed order to stop the subsidy, and is that what indeed happened?
That's what happens. And that's why the courts said that Barack Obama shouldn't have done that. It was a violation of the law.
Didn't the Supreme Court, there's a
Next
law
question.
now.
That was your question?
Point out one thing. The main thing I want to point out on that is the premium went up by over $200 as soon as the government started paying it. So with what happened, well, the government, the insurance companies, when the government quits paying it, they go to the people that can afford what they pay, right? When the government stopped giving them the money, is that going to force them to come back to where they were before so we can really afford to do that? Is that the intent?
They're going to go to where the costs are. Whatever it costs. By the government using the CSR, the funding that would take up the slack and make it possible for people to pay by paying off the big insurance companies.
Single payer.
Because they were being forced to provide this coverage for sick or healthy, young or old, equal. They're going to still get their pay. And that's why we're going to see premium increases take place. And that's what's so sad about the Affordable Care Act, is that it has not kept the promises that the president made. You're going to see, on average, $2,500 reduction for family. You're going to see the ability to keep your health care if you like it. You're going to see the ability to keep your doctor if you like him or her. You're going to see the ability to keep your network if you like it. None of that has been true. And this isn't true. The house of cards is falling. And while there will be a minority, few people that may still, for one reason or another, primarily because of being on Medicaid, be better off than they were before with the expanded Medicaid, the rest of us are going to be a world of hurt. And that's why we are trying to fix it. And that's why you need to talk to your senators and say, when it comes back up in 2018, and it will come back up again in 2018, fix it. Fix it.
That's right. You have money for war, you can save people.
Next question is from Chris from Adrian. Speak to your position on single-payer health care, and don't say it's not working in Canada.
It doesn't work.
Yes, it is.
It's too costly. You know, do we have that poster here? Do we have that? We don't have that poster. I wanted that poster.
We saw it in,
Next time we'll have that poster here. It wouldn't have been my words. It wouldn't have been my words. It'd been Governor Jerry Brown's words.
we saw it in Hillsdale.
Some of the people didn't see it, so Tom, let me rehearse it for the rest of the people who didn't see it. The California legislature, I believe it was the House, decided they wanted single-payer systems, so they passed it. Governor Jerry Brown said to the Senate, I want you to know, we can't afford this, and if you pass it, I will veto it. Why? Because the California total budget, annual budget, is $124 billion a year.
Look at what the administrators of healthcare and hospitals.
$124 billion. I'm sorry that people can't let me finish the question and answer the question. We need a good Rotarian or Kiwanis here to sing "Smile, the World Smiles with You." That'd be a good one to do. Oh,
That's for people to smile.
that's nothing funny about that, is it? 124 billion annual budget. Jerry Brown figured, going to his budget policy group, that it would be the cost of going to a single-payer system in California would be $300 billion annually. And as he said, that will require me to raise taxes by over $200 billion a year on the Californians just to pay for single payer. And so that's why I will veto it. So anyway, bottom line is, single payer hasn't worked, won't work, and I don't support it.
All right. Next question comes from Roland from Tecumseh. Why is the Senate sitting on bills?
Let me get this answer out, please. Okay? Two key reasons. Three to five obstructive Republican senators and Chuck Schumer.
Let him finish, please.
3 to 5 obstructionist Republican senators, Chuck Schumer and 48 Democrats. That's it. That's it.
Next question is Kathy from Tecumseh. Why are jarts, you know, the old lawn darts,
God bless.
illegal to sell but not AK-47s?
Because jarts aren't covered by the Second Amendment. Next question.
All right. Next question is from John from Monroe. The ACA helps 800,000 Michigan citizens. Many of the Senate plans seem to dismantle it. Do you support the President's executive order to stop subsidy payments to encourage insurance companies to participate in the marketplace?
Excellent question.
Excellent question. Let me rephrase the answer to make it even more excellent. I support the rule of law and the fact that this president honored the court decision that said that was illegal for the former president to appropriate and spend dollars he had no authority to appropriate or spend. As you know, having taken government or civics, whatever it's called, during your time in high school, the president has no appropriating authority. That only comes from Congress, starting in the House. President Obama knew that. And initially he even said, give me the funding to do this. Democrats and Republicans alike, in a bipartisan statement, said, no, we can't do that. Some thought on the left side that they didn't want to fund big insurance and give them a special subsidy. Others of us said, if the Affordable Care Act is so costly and so hurtful, why would I want to continue that? Let's fix it. Let's end it. Let's put in place the right proposal. And that's what we've done in the House. And that's where we get back to those 3 to 5 Republicans, Chuck Schumer, and 48 Democrats stopping the process from moving. I think I have time for one more question.
Sure. One more question, and then I've been told that
The hour is up.
Our hour is up. So this last question comes from Lucy from Tecumseh. How do you feel about regular order?
I'm fully supportive of regular order. And that's why I'm glad in the House, regular order is the due process that we go under. Like I said, 1,000 amendments were put up, dealt with, and it took a long time, way into the wee hours of the morning at times, but hey, we're there, we might as well be working. So the regular order is great. It can be messy, but it's the way I think things were intended to be. Now I want to say thank you to each of you for being here. Whether you agree or disagree with me, the fact that you're here, this is part of the American system. It's a participatory government. There have been cameras on me. There have been trackers on me here today from my opposition. There will be snippets put out during the course of the campaign. There are quotes that will be made without full quote. And I want you to understand, folks, we've done our best to be as clear and as honest and as full answering with you as we possibly could be. But in the end, folks, unless we join together as Republicans and Democrats and independents and socialists and you name it, this country doesn't survive. So again, thank you. We'll be coming to another town near you or away from you, because we know people have come from great distance to be here today as well, as those of you who live here. And there'll be plenty more that you'll have the opportunity. So thanks. Have a great day. Enjoy the life that you have. Enjoy it.